hello. Welcome to the Week in Review. I am Mamadou Mbouch. This is as usual. We'll have 10 or so headline stories and we'll try to get behind them and dig a bit deeper into the stories. If there's a standout theme of the week, it surely is rain, rain, rain. Many parts of the country were inundated by heavy rains. Ironically, even while we mark International Disaster Risk Reduction Day, we'll look into the consequences of the rains and what government is doing really about disaster risk reduction. In the week as well, we marked quite a few UN designated commemorative days, such as the International Day of Rural Women, International Day of Girls, World Food Day. And during the week, the students, at least those in grades 7 to 12, went back to school. And also the Gambia Basic Education Certificate examination results were also published. The TRRC resumed. And a Gambian journalist won an award from an international philanthropic organization known as Merck Foundation. We'll look into who is this particularly honored person. So to help me today digest the stories is the QTV's very own Aliou Cisse. Aliou, welcome to the Week in Review.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbouch. It's a pleasure to be back on the program, and once again, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So let's start off straight away. So much of our livelihoods and of our economy really depends on the rain. Yet when it pours, it can cause to many people, dire straits. Let's just take a look at this clip.
The consequence of the rain is a disaster for these residents of Sukuta, whose mud houses could not stand the several hours long heavy rainfall that ensued in the early hours of Wednesday.
There, Aliou, this is so many parts of the country, year in, year out, the same consequence.
Yes, quite interesting, because if you look at it, if there's one thing that has really stand out in this year's rainy season is the fact that we actually have enough rain this rainy season, and then no doubt anywhere when you have this sort of heavy rains, it comes with its own consequences, and then the disadvantages are that we're seeing so many places being flooded. I mean, we all know how it is like, especially in the Gambia with the demarcation and the and all that. It tends to affect most of these settlements within the Combos here. And not only that, when it rains, it's always difficult even to use the main highway from Westfield going to Tabakoto, just because of the port drainage system and all that. And not only that, others you have them, some communities, some people will settle on waterways, and this has always been a big challenge as far as this country is concerned. But to be honest, this year's rains, the floods are quite many. And then as we saw in that footage, of course, report by Modlamin Choi, I mean, it has really caused so much damage for so many families, many of whom, are really struggling to make ends meet.
Absolutely, but again, before the rains, we were warned by the meteorological services that we were going to have more than average rains. So this is it. One understands what I call the underbelly. It comes every year, but it is the preparedness, isn't it? The resilience, the preparedness. This has been lacking for a few years, and it keeps on happening.
Exactly, and if there was any good thing about this whole thing, as you rightly mentioned, is that we were already given a hint that this year's rainy season, we're going to have so much rain, and it was something that has really given us a hint, and it was now up to us to be prepared and know that okay, the risk is going to be high this year, and then what should we put in place in case of such. And then luckily, it came out as it was predicted, and then we have seen what it has cost this year.
Absolutely, and this is said. Everybody knows some of these houses where they are built, some of these areas, and so this is one of the problems we have, isn't it? That we do not sort of enforce sort of building regulations and that sort of thing. So
yeah, in as much as we try to blame people for settling on waterways, there isn't a government institution, of course, the physical planning, which is responsible for ensuring that there's proper demarcation and all that. But unfortunately, in the country, as I always say, physical planning is always hard when there's some sort of land disputes here and there. But then, I mean, most of the problems that we are facing right now, to some extent, some will put the blame on them because it appears they haven't done their homework right at the beginning of all these things. Perhaps at the time there was no understanding or belief that at some point, the population will increase to this size, and of course, settlement will be like this. And then I think that has really affected people mostly because if you look at the societal setup, I mean, the way people construct their compounds, not so many people go into ask whether this is appropriate place to construct my home or not, because right now people are selling compounds everywhere. So I hope the physical planning and all stakeholders will start considering what is happening now moving forward, and so that such doesn't happen going forward.
Absolutely, this is the thing, because with ordinary people will do what is convenient for them, what they can afford. One can understand that mindset, but this is where you need the authorities, because the long-term consequences, it's really the authorities really who should be enforcing these things, because when things go wrong, these are the same ordinary people who will suffer.
Certainly, these are the same people who will suffer, and these are the people who are paying their taxes every month, and then some every day, because they sell in the markets, and every day they're paying their dues and all that. So it is quite important that the government agency responsible for this thing is really seen out there trying to do something. For example, if you go to most of these communities now, even if you want to expand the road, it is a problem, because the roads are so tight, they are so narrow that you find it so difficult to expand, and in such cases it tends to bring about so much issues, and not only that, even in terms of our development, if you look at most of the roads that were constructed, for example, as I said, from Westfield going down to Tabokoto, because of the poor drainage system, it's always a nightmare to really drive from Westfield towards Tabokoto when it rains, and not only that, even other part of the Greater Banjul area. So for me, the issue of these floods is something that the government should really take very serious, and ensure that not only the physical planning, but even the national NDMA, the Disaster Management Agency, can see how best they can help to ensure that they address future occurrence of such floods in the country.
Absolutely. So in the meanwhile, with these people affected, one wonders what next. Would they get some kind of relief package from government? Would philanthropists come in, as we've been seeing recently?
Well, that remains to be seen. I'm sure the NDMA must have comments, or in the process of conducting some sort of an assessment to find out the level of damages caused by the floods. I remember last month we were in Nyomi, where about 52 compounds were damaged as a result of the heavy rains around Kanuma and the surrounding villages. I remember the president visiting them, and then trying to show some sort of solidarity with them for what happened to them, and even announced that the government was going to support them with building materials to an amount worth over $1 million, and also gave $200,000 to the community of Kanuma, to support them. But then, is this really sustainable? Are you going to do this every year? I mean, these are some of the questions that the NDMA and partners should really look into. Are you going to bring about just short-term measures, whereby every year you have to come back and support victims again? The long-term solution is what people want to see now, and I hope the NDMA, together with the partners, of course, government taking the lead, they will see how best they can address this issue.
Thank you very much there, Alu. To our next story, even though it's linked actually to this one we've just discussed. Well, this is one of the extreme consequences that can happen when we have these floods. Let's just take a look at this clip.
The devastating impact of the recent floods could be seen in many parts of the country. This time, there is a casualty. The 19-year-old Ahmed Fall lives in Mahmouda.
That's it. This time there's a fatality. 19 years old. When you look at the clip, the mother was interviewed, and the circumstances in which she knew of her son's death, really very sad.
Quite unfortunate, sad for the family, having to lose, a young boy as this one, Fall, from Mahmouda. I guess that must be in Nyomi, because we have Mahmouda in Nyomi actually. It's quite unfortunate. Sad, as you said, these are all part of the consequences of the heavy floods. And I think, as we said, it all boils down to what must have been done to ensure that all these floods are affected. For example, it happens around London Corner, around the backwater, and going towards the Pagaras. And I think it's just unfortunate. It was meant to be, and now it has happened. And I think the authorities, as I mentioned, I will repeat it again, the authorities should really take their stance and ensure that the issue of the floods is really considered. But also people also should take the responsibility when there's such floods around. I mean, people really need to be very conscious of where to go, and especially looking at the tender age of this boy. Perhaps he was sent by an elderly person. So was it a wise decision to send him out when actually the whole environment was flooded? I could remember sometimes in 2012, 2013, if I'm right. The same scenario happened around Churchillstown. I mean, there was this heavy rain at night, and then this kid was sent by the mom to go and buy a candle. And guess what? She bumped into a gutter, and that was the end of it. The body was found around Talinding Primary School. So I think sometimes parents also have to be very careful, when such floods happen.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. But what we know of this person, Ahmed Fall, was that he was an apprentice.
Exactly.
I think he was a car mechanic apprentice, something like that, at Tipper Garage in Bacote. But again, we were also told by his brother that there were certain mental issues with him. So this is it. Some of these vulnerable groups, when such disasters happen, perhaps what would it take? Maybe just would pass us by, neighbors, but again, everybody's running for your life. It's really very sad that the vulnerable really tend to suffer with these things.
Exactly. Anywhere where disasters happened, they are the most, as you said, this category of people. As you said, he wasn't that much okay mentally, but not only that, even children and women are the most vulnerable when such disasters happen, and that's why they are always a center of focus, not only for governments, responsible governments, but even international organizations such as the UN and other international bodies. They tend to focus more on women, children, and of course this sort of category of people, because they are more vulnerable when disaster strikes. And then we have seen the consequences here, having this young boy having to lose his life just like that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much there. As if to continue the theme, to our next story. This is the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. Here we'll take a look at a clip and hear from our Vice President telling us what the government is doing about DRR, that's Disaster Risk Reduction.
COVID-19 tells us that it is time to act decisively on biological hazards by applying the risk management approach. This indeed will be highly reflected in the plan revised under the disaster risk reduction strategy and policy to reduce the impact of pandemics such as COVID-19 that we are all experiencing the gap, as our DRR strategies does not adequately reflect on such hazards.
Absolutely, we've seen there from the Vice President. We are going to take the the risk management approach. So this was really the whole, the key, the running idea of DRR this year, that how to manage risk first, dealing with risk rather than the disaster itself, rather than waiting until it happens and to respond to that. That is really the key, isn't it?
Yeah,
the preventative stuff.
Exactly, and it all boils down to what I was saying at the beginning. I mean, if like they will always say, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And that seems to be the exact scenario in most of these African countries. In most cases, as I said, most of these things that are happening now should not have happened, but it is happening as we are seeing every day. And then it's more like it is happening every year. Every rainy season is the same old story you see. For example, you go to the communities like Ibo Town. I mean, we all know Ibo Town is very prone to floods every year. But this thing has been happening every year. What has been done so far? I had the VP talking about the issue of DR strategy and policy. We have so many of them in this country. We are the best drafters when it comes to strategy and policies. But in terms of implementation, there's always a problem. And that is not only a problem in the country, but even other countries around the continent. And I think that's something that the government should really take serious. As I said, all these problems of floods we are seeing around Mr. Mboj, it all boils down to ineffectiveness or lack of proper implementation of these strategies and policies. And I hope the government, will learn from this going forward. At least next year, we should see less, negative impact of these floods on the lives and livelihoods of the people, because many of them, they live from hand to mouth. Every day they have to go out and get something to survive on. So if there's a flood and all of a sudden you're going to even leave your house to go out, and then imagine that impact. It's really going to affect them psychologically, because, you're going to even leave your house to go and earn something to survive. So I think it's a big concern, and as I said, all we can say is that the government should really take the lead. I mean, the UN agencies and other bodies are just there to complement, but the government has that responsibility to take the lead in ensuring that there's effective response to ensure that everything is addressed gradually. We understand that, development, whatsoever you call it, is a gradual process. But then slowly, we can get there, hopefully.
Absolutely. And this is in 2016, the UN introduced what they call the Sendai 7 campaign, in which they set targets for themselves within the 7 years, each year one target. So we understand that in 2020, the target is to increase disaster risk reduction strategies by 2020. And we heard from that story, in the story, the Vice President, who said that we really haven't met the standards of the Sendai. The Sendai regulations. So little wonder, there's no surprises that we're seeing the disasters that we are seeing.
Exactly. As I said, it's very very unfortunate, and we hope the government will move from commitment to action, because that's exactly what we want to see. We don't just want to see statements, but we want to see action, and then with that, obviously, there should be a long-term solution to all this problem. But as we said, it's a gradual process. There might come with a short term to address the issue, but then the long-term solution is what Gambians and all of us want to see happen, because at the end of the day, you cannot be here every year. You have to spend millions just to support victims of floods.
Absolutely. When we put it in the context of climate change, and so far what we are getting from scientists, what they're telling us, then we should really be prepared for worse things to happen. This is the key.
Exactly.
So we must begin the preparation now, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Thank you very much there, Alusi, for your views. Now to our next story.
In statistical terms, the results this year is 38% better than the results in 2018. And it is 13% better than the results in 2019.
That was the Gambia Basic Education Certificate examination results, and that was the PS, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Basic Education, Secondary Education, and the like. So this is perhaps the interesting thing about this one, is that 6 months. Schools were closed for 6 months, and then apparently the results this year better than the ones in 2018 and 2019.
Yes, I mean, if you look at it, for many, this really comes as a surprise. Many people were not expecting to have such a result, but then, as usual, sometimes it happens. Knowing the fact that schools were closed for almost 6 months, and then having to resume and then have the exam, and then now we are saying students, like 26 of them, having that is something that is very encouraging, motivating, and then I think it shows that some sort of serious work has been done by the Minister of Education, the teachers, and of course the students themselves, because at the end of the day, the bulk of the work has to do with the students, because you can have a good teacher, but then if you are not serious about your education, there is no way that you can have any impact. So I think it's a good thing. We just have to congratulate the ministry, the teachers, the students, and all the stakeholders in the education sector for these results. Even though there was some sort of problem in the mathematics, which is, as we know, is a problem in this country, not only in the Gambia but even outside the country. Mathematics is always a problem for many students.
Absolutely. So. That's good. So we see whether we will carry on the momentum. And here, of course, we must put it in the context of some time back, the Gambia Teachers Union, they were all coming out and they were so unhappy about a lot of things. But really, these results would surely reflect on them in a positive way, in many ways.
Exactly, because knowing the fact that the restriction that were brought about by the pandemic, really, so at some point there was nothing like serious lectures in most of these schools, and then at some point, some people even thought perhaps these exams will have just been abandoned, and then let allow the students to stay home and then just keep safe. But eventually, we saw that they had to go and start to the exams, and then coming out with such results, as I said, with all the challenges here and there, we are able to pull like so many students getting A's. With the overall results, is something that we don't know whether this thing will really determine the overall result. But then from what we have seen, like over 20 students having like A's, for me is quite encouraging.
Fantastic. Thank you very much there, Anu. Well, now we'll go for a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the stories. Hello, welcome back to the Week in Review. I'm here today to digest some of the week's stories with Mr. Aliu Ceesay, QTV's Mr. Aliu Ceesay. Now to our next story. Government, well, there's a pressure everywhere now for governments to ease some of their regulations, their COVID-19 regulations, and in the week the government did. Let's just look at this clip.
Effective Thursday, 15 October 2020, His Excellency President Adama Barrow is pleased to declare public places such as hotels, motels, lodges, bars, restaurants, video clubs, museums, public swimming pools, and gymnasia throughout the Gambia open.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And afterwards, when the land borders were opened, exactly. and sea, well, for the airport is on the 31st of October. I think there are repair works going on there. And then, of course, casinos, I think, were also so virtually, and the nightclubs. So virtually, everything, we are easing down.
Yes, if you look at it, I mean, for me, for some people, this was a welcoming news. I mean, when this news broke out that, okay, now government has further relaxed the COVID-19 restrictions on some of these public places, I mean, for some, they really welcome it. I mean, it's good that, some people are now going back to their normal lives and then trying to make ends meet. But then we need to understand it's not an indication that COVID-19 is normal. I mean, it shows that, I mean, government, because according to the release, the president, in consultation with this subcommittee, cabinet subcommittee on COVID-19, actually, came up with this idea after getting the technical advice from the Health Emergency Committee, which is welcoming at the moment, and we just hope people wouldn't, take it as an opportunity to think that COVID-19 is over and just to be, idling around. I hope people will try as much as possible to ensure that they keep themselves safe and from the COVID-19. And then governments should really also ensure that some of the measures put in place are quite respected by the people.
Absolutely, but again, here the fear is that I think even the WHO, they've warned us that the fear is that we've seen in other countries where initially it appeared as if they had the disease under control, they eased the regulations, and then afterwards there's a resurgence of it. So perhaps that's also the fear. The WHO is certainly fearful of that.
Exactly, and then for some, I mean, what we can do now is just to embrace the reality of COVID-19. And I can remember the president at some point saying, I mean, it is not even clear when COVID-19 will leave. So for some people, COVID-19 is here to stay, and then people just have to embrace the reality that it is here, and they have to live with it. And then what is next now is how will you keep yourself safe and while you go about your normal business.
Absolutely there, and this is really very much tied to the one next story that the schools have opened, back to school now. But are they observing the safety measures? Let's just look at this clip.
Face masks were earlier provided to grade 9 and 12 students by MOPSI, but this time none is provided yet.
Tomorrow, by the grace of God, they will all come with the face mask, yes. If they don't come, they cannot go into the classes. They were outside today, and some of them, we have asked them to move out. So they come with the face mask and get into the class, into the school or into the class.
So this is, they've gone back to school, and the idea of face masks when grades 9 and 12, when they resumed, the ministry provided face masks for them. But you can surely understand the logistical difference here. Yeah. All from grade 7 to 12, that could be quite a challenge. What do you make of that?
Indeed, quite challenging. I mean, but then in this case, who is responsible for providing the face masks? Is it the ministry or the parents? This thing needs to be very, very clear. If it
should have been made clear.
Exactly. If it's the ministry, then the ministry needs to step up and ensure that every student, before you get into any school, you get the mask. And then we have seen some people have been coming out to support it. We recently saw Q Group, the Q Group Foundation coming out to support $1 million. Yes, I mean, which is very encouraging. And I hope more institutions and companies who will come on board to support the ministry. I'm sure the ministry would love to see every student before you enter any school you have the face mask. But as you said, now the logistical challenges is there as well. And then it is good that schools have open, and then students are so excited to go back to school. Reunite with their peers after months of break due to the COVID-19, and now the schools have resumed. I think the ministries will ensure that the children are equally protected. In as much as you wanted to go back to school, their health also matters, and I hope that is considered by the ministry.
Absolutely. You have the health issues on one side, and on the other, I mean, so much learning, contact hours lost.
Exactly.
How do you make up for? How do you recover all of the things lost? They're talking about extending the contact hours, talking about double shifting and alternating. They're talking about all sorts of strategies to make up for what has already been lost.
Yeah, all those things could be good options. You can even have Saturday where students can go to school. But what will happen? Are you going to then increase the payment of the teachers as well? That's also another thing that so many teachers will be waiting to see what the ministry will come up with. Because you cannot just say, okay, now we're going to come with double shift, or we're going to extend the number of days, and then you still paying that particular teacher the same salary. And I hope that's something that the ministry also should consider, because I'm sure most of the teachers wouldn't just take it lightly, having them extend the number of days that they go to school, and still you are paying them the same salary that we are paying them. And I hope the ministry will come out and explain this one.
Absolutely, because whenever you come with any regulations, then that would have some ramifications for the teachers, for the schools, isn't it, really? And it may involve costs and the like. And we've heard from the Gambia Teachers Union complain that really most schools here are privately owned.
Exactly.
To understand, but again, apparently they were not getting any help. So how would you expect them really to take on board some of these regulations where it might involve cost and all the rest of it? So you could possibly see that a lot of students will stand to suffer if we have to implement this without help.
Definitely, because from this thing we've seen in the past where teachers have come out to protest, somehow requesting for other benefits here and there, which were at some point not provided. And now that with this pandemic and with the new options on the table for the ministry to ensure that they are able to recover the lost hours, it is something that the teachers also will be hoping to capitalize on, to ensure that they are not abused in this case, and then ensure that if they are going to extend the number of days that they got to work, at least their salary or their benefits is also considered.
Thank you very much, Aliou Ceesay, for your views. Now to our next news story. The TRRC resumed proceedings on Monday. I think in the course of the week we had, 4 or 5 witnesses. Let's just take a look at this clip.
So in silata ko ni manda bulandi ni molu kono mumbe bulana kafoto katala jara loto.
I was scared that if I did not partake in the people who were going for the treatment program,
nata kumundoro wolom ni balantala ibe problem ol sutola.
Because at that time whatever he said stood, and if you deny these orders, you could be in trouble.
The witness said they were taken to State House and met Yahya Jammeh, who gave him a concoction to drink, and he was asked to undress.
Absolutely there. That was on Monday, the first day of the resumption of public hearings, and he was the unidentified. He was incognito witness, and it was quite interesting there, telling us some of the reasons why he decided to go to join the Yahya Jammeh treatment. He was scared of the consequences of not joining.
Yes, according to his witness, according to his testimony, yes. He was scared. Scared, I don't know what he means by he was scared. Was he forced from his home to go and join the treatment program? That's another thing that we need to establish as far as some of these testimonies are concerned. Because I'm sure we have around 2 million people. Not everybody went in for the Jammeh treatment. I mean, some of these people who went for the Jammeh treatment actually had the belief that it was real, even though it wasn't scientifically proven that his medication were really working. But some people, because of perhaps the mentality, the belief in the herbs and all that, and then perhaps because of some of the narrations they were seeing in the media as well, trying to show people taking this treatment might also convince some people to go in for the treatment. But eventually, from the testimonies, some of them said they had realized at some point that it wasn't working for them. In fact, if we listen to some of the witnesses, like Dr. Hassan J, yes, who actually said, in fact, at some point, it has really, made their work so difficult for them at the MRC. At some point, some of their patients had to leave the MRC and go in for the Jammeh treatment. But some also didn't stay longer because they had to come back quickly because they weren't seeing any improvement, while others came back late with some weak immune systems, and some, he said, lost their lives. So it is quite interesting that so many people are coming out to say things that many people didn't know at the time regarding this whole treatment.
Absolutely, and the key takeaways for me there, you got it, as you said, from Dr. Hassan J, and we also had the former president's aide de camp, Gano, Lamin Gano. So the key takeaways there would be this. There was a good program, an effective MRC program going on there until Jammeh's treatment came along and just destroyed all of that. And they had almost certainly, unanimously agreed that it didn't work. They were all pointing to that. So it seems as if, these are just testimonies yet, but it seems as if Jammeh's treatment, ironically, derails the whole thing.
Yeah, because if you realize, if you listen to Dr. J's testimony, at some point he was telling TRC that Jammeh even requested, to work with MRC. But because of the way MRC work, I mean, they couldn't just endorse it. I mean, they politely respond to him that, they explained their reasons for not being able to work with him. And what he said was that in fact, he doesn't need their support. At some point, according to testimonies, he even threatened that if MRC ever come close to his, his patients and samples and all that, it could have been something. And at some point, according to the testimonies, he had even threatened to close down MRC in the country. Which to me, that was too much. I mean, that was really extreme, knowing the good work MRC is doing in the country, and not only in the Gambia, but even in other countries. But that just shows that, how Jammeh was. I mean, we all know how Jammeh was. But in terms of the treatment program, I mean, for some people, I mean, I wouldn't say they were forced to go going for the Jammeh's treatment. That must be established. I mean, perhaps they were just convinced, perhaps what they saw, and then they believed in it, and they went in for it. But I don't think there was anyone who was, forced out from your home to go and undergo this medical treatment. I think, as I said, because of our belief in these herbs and all that, and then some people, as I said, they were convinced by perhaps other people that, okay, this thing is working. They went in for it. Unfortunately, it seems as Dr. J said, it was more like a hoax, and
yes, it was a hoax. He called it rubbish and criminal. Yeah. Thank you very much. The testimonies will still be coming in. We'll see how things unfold. To our next story, one of those commemorative days we were talking about in the introduction. International Day for Rural Women. Here we listen to the Minister of Women telling us really how much women contribute in our economy.
Research shows that rural women account for over 70% of the agricultural labor force in the Gambia and over 50% of small ruminant production. Yet, this has not yet reflected in their level of production and productivity, and by extension, their socioeconomic status.
Really, they're 70% of the workforce. I mean, we've always known this. I mean, they've always said it, that men, we're just good at sitting down and talking about community politics, whilst the women are in the farms and doing all sorts of work. So certainly to commemorate them, but it takes much more than commemoration. I mean, in the sense that if you want to make commemoration meaningful, give them good action that would give them the right outcomes that they want.
Yeah, I think on this day, we really have to salute women across the world, especially Gambian women, hats off. I mean, they're so hardworking. Before you even realize that, Mr. Mboch, you travel to rural Gambia and you see what women are going through every day just to make ends meet. And for some people, they're in control of their families. I mean, they pay for the tuition fee of their children just to go to school. And that's why you shouldn't be surprised when you see someone is more attached to the mom than the father in most cases, because, they are so close to their mothers. And not only that, even in the combos here, you wake up early in the morning, you see women running to the market, trying to do some sort of petty trading just to ensure that, they are able to sustain themselves and their families, just to make sure that, their children get the best of education. So I think this is a day that all of us, should really, salute women in rural Gambia for really, standing out, for really, prove divine oaths. I mean, despite the challenges, they are able to, live up to expectation, and then, ensure that, their children, their families are okay and doing well. For most of us who are from the rural Gambia, we know how it feels. We grew up there, we went to school in rural Gambia, and then, to be honest, we know what our mothers, have gone through to have us, to be at this stage. So, yes. To me, rural women, congratulations.
Absolutely,
and so hardworking.
And I read one statistic that most women in Gambia are rural.
Yeah.
Because one can just imagine with urbanization, mainly it's the men, the
Exactly.
men who really migrate and they leave the women there and that sort of thing. And for a long time, wasn't it, there's been this urban bias in development projects. So leaving the rural, and who would suffer most? Really women and children and the weak.
Exactly.
Do you see any change? There appears a change with this current government that to take some technologies, some development projects, more to engage there more in the rural areas.
I think at the moment, I wouldn't say, I mean, there's not much happening. I think the government is really trying to see how best they can empower Gambian women. Just recently, the Minister of Women Affairs, Fat Kinte, was at the Parliament where a bill is already enacted, the Women Enterprise Fund Act, which seeks to support women in various businesses that they are engaged into. Under this act, actually, they're going to be provided with training to ensure that they're able to carry out their businesses. Already, the European Union had committed to pump in 3 million euros. Gambia government is bringing in $6 million just for a start, which is quite encouraging. And I just hope government will try to bring in more projects that will directly impact on the lives and livelihoods of women in rural Gambia. Because to be honest, they are so vulnerable, and despite that, they are so hardworking. You go to the rural Gambia, you see a woman as old as, I cannot even tell, but then, it's still out there in the fields, as you put it, in the rice fields, going to the farms, just to make sure that, they ensure that their families are well fed. And for me, that is quite commendable.
Thank you very much there, Mr. Aliu Cissé. Now we'll go for another short commercial break. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Week in Review. We'll go straight away into our next story, International Day of the Child. It was declared in 2011 by the UN. But what do children themselves think about the day itself? Let's just take a look at this clip.
Mary Banna Silva is a member of the Gambia Starfish International, and for her, world leaders should take seriously laws protecting the rights of girls, and not just to pass laws without their implementation.
It means a lot to me because given that it's not every day that girls are celebrated, and then there's a specific day set aside where the society, the community, world leaders and the world at large are celebrating us and recognizing our potential, means so much to me as a girl.
Yes, there you would have sort of noticed that I just said International Day of the Girl.
God.
People say girl child. I think child is really unnecessary there. I assume that a girl is a child. When you're grown up, they call you a woman. So I just stick with International Day of the Girl. Absolutely. There's a proud young woman there that there's a day designated as such so that people can talk about their issues. They will have the platform to talk about their issues.
Yes, it's a quite important day, as you said, to celebrate the girl. For the fact that, they are also among the most vulnerable group in our society. Look at some of the societal means, all that, the FGMs, you have some of them drop out of school, the rape cases here and there. They are so vulnerable that, it is good that a day like this is dedicated to them, just to celebrate them and also give them the platform for them to come out and raise issues directly affecting them as far as their progress is concerned. So it's a quite important day for them, and it also provides government and those in power to understand that there is a need to come up with laws that will protect the girl as they move on to advance whatsoever they want to achieve in their life. So I think this is a very important day for everyone who is in the area of protecting the girl, be it the media, the government, the police, all the activists. It's an important day for all of them.
Absolutely, and here with the legislation is one thing, but again you also have traditional, conventional norms really that according to sort of, I do not know, is it our modern way of thinking? So there appears to be a clash between modernity with its emphasis on universalism, equality, and traditional societies with the emphasis on hierarchy.
Exactly.
So there's a huge problem there for this movement.
That's a big problem, as you rightly mentioned. Making that comparison, you realize that there's a lot of work need to be done. You know, there's a lot that need to change if we really want to achieve what this day is meant for. And that will require all hands being on deck and to ensure that, you know, there's so much engagements with the local leaders to make them understand the importance of girl child in relation to education, you know, having them, you know, pursue their goals. I mean, you go to the provinces, I mean, or certain communities, I mean, it's even a taboo to have your girl child go to Western education. For them, they believe you should either go to the madrasa or once you, some people that are even under 18 and, you know, you are married. So all those things are things that are really affecting their progress. And not only that, as the forced marriage, the issue of the FGM, you know, rape by people who they trusted. I mean, all these things are things that are really hampering their progress. And I think, as I said, all stakeholders will use this day to reflect on how far we have come as a country in terms of the challenges and successes that we have registered in protecting the rights of the girl on this day.
Absolutely. And during the week, you also reported on a story, didn't you, about the protection of children's rights?
Exactly. This is a one-year project being implemented by the Child Protection Alliance. It is funded by Save the Children International. Actually, it is focusing on the tourism sector, businesses in the tourism sector, and so that, you know, even children who work there are protected by these businesses. And it's going to be a pilot project. Gambia is among the few countries where this project is being implemented. And then they're hoping that at the end of the day, it's really going to help in ensuring that the girls or the children are really protected in these businesses where they work.
Absolutely. I mean, especially when you put it against the context that perhaps in the past few years or so, we've been getting stories, you know, newspaper stories, even in the West, talking about characterizing our tourism as sex tourism. And you know that these young girls very vulnerable when you go to certain areas. What you see can shock you.
It comes at a time when the tourism sector, the tourism season is just about to commence, and then we've seen in the past, as you said, we've seen several media reports relating to the tourism sector, where we have seen so much abuses, reported abuses here and there. And I think this project being piloted by the Child Protection Alliance will really help in addressing some of those problems that children face in the tourism sector.
Absolutely, and we've heard from advocacy groups, they've been sort of quite shocked, scandalized by the fact that when you look at the number of prosecutions, even the government will say that they're quite serious about it, but again, when you look at the number of prosecutions in this area, this gender-based violence and the like, they're shockingly low, particularly against children. Pedophilia, they're really shockingly low when everybody's talking about it.
Like I always said, it doesn't matter how much effort is being done into addressing the issue of gender-based violence by so many groups. Just recently, the Paradise Foundation, in partnership with UNFP and other partners, actually organized a 2-day media training for journalists, just to orient them on how to go about reporting gender-based violence. But as I said, no matter how much effort is being done, if the government is not, you know, ensuring that those alleged of committing such crimes are prosecuted, and then nothing is going to change in this country. And I think that said and done, we hope, you know, the police and the law enforcement agencies will ensure that some of these cases are investigated, you know, bearing in mind the interests of the survivor, but also not losing the sight of the fact that the perpetrator also has the right to a fair trial. That also needs to be understood as far as this whole issue of gender-based violence is concerned. But as I said, it is quite important that, you know, the laws are enforced, because we have very good, we have progressive laws in this country, no doubt about it. You know, we have the Women's Act and, you know, the Children Act and all that. All those laws are here. But if they are not implemented, for me, it doesn't make any sense. But as I said, in as much as, you know, the interest of the survivor, you know, should be considered, the perpetrator also has the right to a fair trial, and that must be considered. Yes. But then the issue of gender-based violence really requires all hands on deck, because if you look at it, most of the victims are women. And then according to data, I mean, most of the perpetrators are men. But then if you look at it, it's not something that is really well reported in the media, maybe because, you know, we have more men in the media than women.
Absolutely, the eternal malaise implementation. Thank you very much there, Ali, for your views. Now, the next question. If one is infected with COVID-19 and one gets cured, can you be reinfected? Let's just take a look at this clip.
A study published in the Lancet Infectious Disease journal indicates that exposure to the virus may not guarantee future immunity.
Yes, it will not guarantee future immunity. They've seen a few examples around the world that people infected, cured, and got reinfected and twice. Not that many. So they were very quick to emphasize that let's be careful here. It just will affect possibly just a few out of the millions that will potentially. But that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. For some, they will argue that yes, once you contract the virus, you know, that's the end of it. You cannot have it again. It is open to debates. As you said, you know, there are people who might contract it and then you get treated, and then, you know, and then next few months, you know, you contract the virus again. But as I said, it is something that is open to debate, and it depends on which side of the coin you believed in. But then it's quite interesting. But the most important is just let's make sure that, you know, we protect ourselves. That's the most important.
Absolutely, and one must be very careful because after all, this is a disease. It's new. That's why they call it the novel coronavirus. So they're finding out so much about it. So that was a sobering, as it were, research piece of information there. Thank you very much. But recently, WHO, just one more thing, they've been warning. We've talked about it earlier about a second wave. There's the possibility of second wave. So they've been warning all African countries who are easing these regulations to have certain interventions, potential interventions in place, to have certain structures in place, so that when you have a re-emergence of any of these, then you can immediately tackle it.
Yeah, I think the problem with most of these African countries, including the Gambia, is the issue of this denial. I mean, from the start of the pandemic, we know that there are some people, you know, they never believed in this virus. Like, you go to rural Gambia, I could remember sometime I was in rural Gambia, and people were saying, okay, this is combo virus. They put it like that. This is combo virus, you know. But then, as you said, we've seen even in some countries in Europe, you know, we are seeing some sort of lockdown coming back, because, as you said, a second wave of the virus is coming again. They're seeing some sort of increase in the surge of cases in those countries, and then they are now trying to introduce some sort of lockdowns just to ensure that, you know, they're able to contain the virus.
That's it. We should be careful about that. Thank you very much. Finally, we're coming towards the end. The Merck Foundation is a philanthropic organization, I think based in Germany. So they've given an award to a Gambian journalist. Ali, this will be interesting. I wonder who it is. Let's just take a look at this clip.
It's quite a great moment for me as a Gambian, of course, including QTV, where I work for. I mean, all these things couldn't have been possible without the teamwork that we have here at QTV. I think this success is about all of us. It's about the QTV. It's about the whole Gambia. Because having a journalist from the Gambia, you know, imagine, you know, first position among, you know, journalists from other countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, you name them in those African sub-region, is quite a great moment. And, you know, I have to dedicate this award to all the viewers of QTV.
Congratulations there, QTV's very own Manu. So tell us a bit about the award and Merck Foundation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbuch. Yeah, actually, this whole idea of this award comment started sometime around March, April, if my memory serves me right, and it was open to African journalists to submit work they have done in relation to, you know, COVID-19, you know, trying to raise awareness, because the fact that, you know, there were some sort of restrictions asking people to stay home, and then, you know, the media had a critical role to play in ensuring that people are really enlightened. You know, their awareness is raised in relation to how they should protect themselves from the COVID-19. And then myself, including other journalists in the Gambia and outside the country, you know, so many submissions were sent. And then was it on day before yesterday, actually, as I was at Paradise representing Mr. Ade at one of these.
Was it on Thursday?
On Thursday, exactly. I was there to represent Mr. Ade at one of these training programs for journalists, where he was supposed to present a paper, but then unfortunately he couldn't make it, so he asked me to step in for him. Immediately when I was done with my presentation, I came out and then, you know, on my phone, and then I started seeing the messages coming in, and then it was a proud moment not only for me, I would say, but QTV, where I work for, as I said in that interview, I mean, because it's all about teamwork. You know, Mr. Mboch, you work here, you know how it is done here. That's some sort of teamwork amongst us, from the reporter, the cameraman, you know, even the technicians in the studio, you people, you and Mr. Ade, Babakar, the editors and all that, you know, there's some sort of that teamwork. I mean, a lot of efforts is always done into most of these stories that we bring on QTV. And then when the news came out that, you know, I emerged as the winner for the whole of West Africa, I mean, it was quite gratifying. But then, as they said, that's what happens, you know, when a lot of efforts and work is done into something. And then it is quite gratifying that the Mark Foundation in partnership, you know, because actually there's a partnership between the Mark Foundation and other African First Ladies in the continent. So you actually had West Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa. So each region, you know, has their own group. So I belong to the West Africa group, and that's why you have Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia. You have journalists from across all these big nations that actually submitted their work, and then it turned out that I emerged the winner. And then, as I said, this an award is for the whole country, it's for the Gambia, because having a Gambian journalist, you know, winning such awards, I mean, it's something that, you know, every journalist in this country should be proud about, because it's about the Gambian media. It really represents the good work that Gambian journalists in this country are doing, and yeah.
Absolutely, and really, it's nearly Gambia Press Union Journalism Awards this month, and over the years you've scooped a few.
Yeah,
we're not going to go into that yet. We've come to the end of this weekend review. Thank you very much, Mr. Aliou Ceesay. It's been fantastic having you here and digest, you know, the week's stories.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mboch. It was a pleasure to be on the program. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much, viewers, for joining us on this program. Until next time, goodbye. And Mr. Adedarame, we can't wait to see you here. Goodbye, everybody.